Good morning, everybody. My name is Miss Mency, and I'm the Track 2 counselor. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the importance of self care and having a self care toolkit. I felt like this is an important topic because middle school life is a place that can be equally exciting and stressful. One way to manage the constant ups and downs of middle school life is to practice self care. Just simple activities that can help reduce stress and enhance your quality of life. Research shows that in addition to keeping you healthy, it can also improve your overall well being. And that's why I want to focus on self care and how to effectively practice it. But in order to effectively practice it, we first need to know what self care is. Self care is taking an active and proactive role in one's own overall health and wellness. It's creating a framework for managing stress, life changes, burnout, and fatigue. It's an empowerment process that creates balance and equilibrium across our personal, social, and school lives. And it's any activity that we do deliberately in order to take care of our physical, emotional, spiritual health and well being. Now, there are 6 types of self care. There's emotional self care, practical self care, physical self care, social self care, spiritual self care, and mental self care. I wanted to start with emotional self care because it is one of the most important facets of our self care practice, mainly because our ability to regulate our emotions and cope with different feelings as they arise is vital to our happiness and overall quality of life. But it is one of the hardest things to understand how to manage. And if we can't tap into our emotions, then we can't tap into how we feel. It's hard to figure out what kind of self care practice to start, or even if we need to practice self care in the first place. When we think about self care practices, it's important to realize that this word implies more than just manicures and massages, bubble baths, and face masks. Self care is not just a privilege reserved for the rich and famous, it's a vital part of our being that allows us to become our most happy and grounded self. Self care is more than just an occasional treat to ourselves. It's a way of living each day that incorporates behaviors that help you feel refreshed, re energized, and rested when dealing with stress and anxiety. So, when we're talking about emotional self care, that can be described as caring for your emotional needs by identifying and nurturing your feelings, your conscious inner state, and your intellect. So, in simpler terms, emotional self care is caring for your emotional needs by identifying what it is you're feeling and then moving forward in a way that honors yourself and your emotions in a positive way. But when our emotional self care needs are not being addressed, we tend to feel frustrated and burnt out, leaving us with a feeling of how did I get myself into this mess? And we really have no good, real plan to climb out. And this is why we need an emotional toolkit. But it is important to remember that everyone deals with the challenges life gives us differently. And therefore, everyone's preference for practicing self care is different as well. What works for me may not work for everyone else. But I do want to give you a toolkit to help get a basic understanding of how to create your own personal toolkit that will help you recharge and re energize and reset when it comes to dealing with stress and anxiety. Here Here's a list of the things that you can put in your emotional self-care toolkit. The first is learn to say no and to say yes to yourself. Yes, we all have essential needs, and it is important to honor yours. And sometimes that means you have to say no to others to do that. The next is learn to create boundaries with your friends and family. The next is learn to identify triggers for your emotions. Once you have identified your triggers, identify different ways to consciously respond or be with them in a safe way. The next example of an emotional self-care tool is to practice meditation and learn how to be in the moment. A lot of times we get distracted, and it's important to sometimes come back to center, come back to what we're doing presently. And meditation is a good way to do that. Another thing that we can add to our toolkit is learning how to breathe deeply, learning how to manage our breaths in a way that calms our spirit. Another thing that we can add to our self-care toolkit is to monitor your inner dialogue. When we're talking about monitoring your inner dialogue, that means making sure that we're saying things that lift ourselves up. A lot of times the things that we say in our head isn't always nice. And sometimes you have to be your biggest cheerleader. So we're changing our inner dialogue in order to help our emotional well-being. The next thing is to practice positive affirmations or have positive self-talk or even using mantras. This is a way to kind of boost our self-esteem. And again, it ties back to making sure our inner dialogue is positive. Another thing is practicing the habit of gratitude. A lot of times if we think about the things that we're thankful for and the things that we appreciate, it allows us to appreciate our life in general. Also, taking time out to reflect and identify. Sometimes we need to reflect on our day and identify our feelings throughout the day in order to make sure that we're in balance and equilibrium with all of the aspects of our life. Another thing that we can do is listen to our favorite music. A lot of times if we listen to our favorite music that's uplifting, it uplifts our emotional well-being. And so you need to listen to your favorite playlist. Create that playlist for that when you're sad that can boost up your emotions. Also, you can tap into your creativity. A lot of times when we tap into our creativity by maybe drawing or journaling or cooking or baking, it boosts our overall mood. And so that's something that's great to put into your toolkit. And the last thing is make sure you have a support system. Maybe ask when you need help. And you can definitely get support from a coach, a counselor, or someone you trust, like a teacher, a parent, a friend. These are all great things to put into your emotional self-care toolkit. The first thing when creating this toolkit that I want you to do is to choose 5 things that you can do in 5 minutes or less that can support you in practicing self-care. Put those 5 things in your toolbox. Reach into that toolbox and use those things when you're feeling stressed or anxious in order to uplift, recharge, replenish, and refresh your emotions and how you're feeling. And if ever you're having a hard time creating your toolkit, remember that you can always come down to Student Services and we'll be able to assist you in making sure that you have that toolkit available to you. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you in another time. Have a great day.